Today, we're going to get all the way into the top 5 things or 5 actions to take if you struggle with binge eating or out of control, like episodes with food. We're going to get into it, but first, welcome, sisters, to the Body Ally podcast, where we learn how to stop battling with our bodies and with food from a faith-based approach. We learn instead how to be an ally with our bodies, partnering with them as the gift that God intended, learning how to pursue health goals, not in an effort to prove value, but as an actual act of love. And I'm your host, Kerrie Nygard. Okay. Let's get into it. But first, I want to encourage you to look at the description down below, whether you're on a podcast, look at the description of the podcast, or if you're watching here on YouTube, look at the description below. There are links to be able to view some of my new free content. There's a link to go receive my free download, which is how to find freedom from food urges and cravings. And this is based upon brain science. It's the very thing that I teach it's one awesome tool that I teach within my larger community of women that pay to work with me, yours for free. So go ahead and check that out. I just want to encourage you to do that. Okay, let's get into it now. Top 5 things. And this works with binge eating. This works with just kind of even just like mini out of control eating episodes, or feeling like there's a meal that just keeps going on and on and on. You can't seem to quite get yourself to finish the meal. It can even work with all day grazing. But for the rest of this podcast, I'm going to address it as binge eating, but it can be, these top things also can be applied to these other type of out of control behaviors with food as well. Okay. Number 1, start eating consistently. What I mean by that is I want you to stop skipping meals. I want you to stop trying to be really specific and really structured and really good all day, because what happens is that all that pressure mounts up and it leads to you overeating later at the end of the day when you're tired and can't seem to resist any longer, especially after you feel lots of emotions throughout the day. So you want to be eating about every 3 to 6 hours. If you eat a meal and you can't quite make it to about 3 hours, then you probably didn't have enough protein or fiber or amount of food in that meal. And if you can't make it to 5, maybe even 6 hours, like that's kind of stretching it out, but that's about what you want to do during active hours of the day. Okay, I'm seeing like when you're up and moving around during the day. So why do we want to do that? Because if you're withholding all day long, it's like holding a beach ball underneath the water, and then pretty soon biology will take over and it primes the pump for overeating and binge eating in the afternoons and evenings. So eating enough calories earlier in the day is going to set you up for success. The second action to take, is to stop labeling foods as good or bad. Foods aren't good or bad. They don't morally make you good or bad, though they can leave you feeling good or bad. Now, just about every time I say this, people say, well, what about gluttony? You can eat foods that aren't good for you. Yes, and that will leave you not feeling good. But you as a person do not become a bad person or less valuable because you ate a food or a certain amount of food. Because when you think of in terms of food being good or bad, then when you eat it, then you become good or bad. And this idea that certain foods are forbidden increases the drive for desire for that food. It's kind of like supply and demand for your brain, and your brain's going to fixate on the thing that you are saying no to. And this is different than an actual food choice. Some people just choose not to eat foods because they don't leave themselves feeling good, but they don't tend to binge eat on those because they think in terms of how they want to feel physically. But if you think in terms of good or bad, or I'm good or bad when I eat or don't eat this thing, that primes the over desire and it primes the pump for binge eating. Okay, number 3 is to start identifying triggers before the binge. This requires you to get really curious. If you're constantly berating and judging yourself for binge eating, then you'll never break the cycle, because the judgment and the shame is part of the binge eating cycle. When you judge and shame yourself, that's actually part of the cycle. So you got to stop doing that and start getting curious so that you can think, what happened before the binge? What was going on? And you know what usually it is? That you were feeling some uncomfortable emotions. You were feeling worried or confused or anxious or angry or sad or lonely. These types of emotions, especially when we don't know how to feel those emotions, will lead you to eating because you don't know what to do with your emotions. You don't know how to solve for them, but food's there. And so when you don't start to identify triggers as which emotions are doing this and increase your capacity to handle and manage and process those emotions, then you'll never be able to stop binging because you won't have any other way to resolve your emotions. You might trade out binging for alcoholism or drugs or chronic scrolling, right? And so we want to think in terms of what are the triggers that cause this to happen? Not what's wrong with me, I have to figure this out. No, but instead, what's going on? What are the things that come before the binge? All right, number 4, stop using food as the primary coping tool. So that kind of goes along with identifying your triggers. Okay. When you binge, it kind of can give this temporary numb feeling. It can kind of soothe or distract, give you a sense of reward because of the dopamine hit. When you go on a food chasing, go like through a food chasing moment, you're like, ooh, try a little of this, try a little of that, sweet, salty, right? This type of food chasing leads to dopamine hit after dopamine hit after dopamine hit. Not only in the eating of the food, but actually more so in the pursuit of it. Have you ever been eating something and you're not even paying attention to enjoying it because you're already thinking about eating more of it when you're done with what you already have? That is because there is a significant dopamine release from the anticipation of the thing. Actually, even more dopamine from the anticipation of the thing than from the actual thing, though there is a dopamine hit or reward in the eating of the thing. So what you want to do is expand your capacity to solve for your emotions. Expand your capacity to regulate your nervous system, to soothe and comfort yourself, other than food. Examples of this would be things like walking, journaling, prayer, meditation, connecting and calling and connecting with people, breathing exercises, music, other creative outlets, and just resting. Sometimes people go eat because it's the only time they ever give themselves permission to take a break. What if you can just give yourself permission to take a break without food having to be involved if you're not actually hungry? So stop using food as the primary coping tool. And in order to do that, you have to expand your ability or your toolbox to handle these emotions. And then the 5th and final thing that I want you or action to take in order to stop binge eating is to stop the shame spiral after a binge. It has been studied and it shows those who have like diagnosed binge eating disorder, those who stop giving themselves a hard time after a binge. So if you have a binge and you think, oh, this is so terrible, I can't believe I did that, I have to undo that, I'm going to have to restrict my food all day long to try to make up for what I did yesterday, and oh, what's wrong with me, I need to fix myself, and right on and on and on. When you heap upon shame and guilt and lecturing, when you do that, that's also part of the cycle. I kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier. That's part of the cycle. And so in order to stop that cycle, you have to, instead of judging and shaming and blaming and giving yourself a hard time, replace all of that with compassion, because the reason you did that is because you have an unmet need or an unresolved emotion that you needed help resolving, and you want to be curious. I wonder what occurred before that, and I wonder what would actually solve for my loneliness or my frustration or my disappointment or whatever the emotion might be. So in order to stop the binging, you have to stop the shame that comes right after a binge, and you replace it with compassion and support and love. And that's how that works. So I'm going to just run through them really quick right from the top. Number 1, start eating consistently, beginning at the front end of your day. Stop labeling food as good or bad. Start identifying triggers before the binge. So pay attention to what happened before the binge. And then stop using food as the primary coping tool, meaning expand your emotional awareness and capacity. And then number 5 is to stop the shame spiral after a binge. Ladies, if you've been struggling with binge eating or overeating or excessive grazing and you don't know how to stop, I would invite you to join with me in my Freedom of Faith-Based Women, this whole community, in the FBF or Freedom with Body and Food program, and the links down below, where you can learn about and stop this food and body struggle and come to a place of ease so that you can learn how to reach your health goals without all the diet mentality, without the crazy behaviors around food. And remember first and foremost that this podcast is the Body Ally podcast. And what we do here is that we're all about the Body Ally movement, where we're inviting women to join the Body Ally movement to stop battling with their bodies, but instead to align, become an ally with them. And when we do that, we're accepting our body as the gift that God intended it to be. All right. You can help participate with me in spreading this ministry by sharing this podcast with others, by leaving really good reviews, okay? If you don't like the podcast, don't leave a review. But if you do, leave a review on anywhere where you listen to podcasts. Comment, like, share. Do it as much as you possibly can. And when you do, it costs you nothing, but it allows you to participate with me in spreading the Body Ally movement so that women can come into a place where they're in a partnership, where they're an ally with their God-given gifts, their bodies. All right, ladies, thank you so much. Bye-bye.